And we're going to take this energy even to the next level, so I invite you all to rise, because the next man I'm going to introduce is the very reason that we are all here. He is the CEO of United Independents and the founder and executive producer of the Independent National Convention. Folks, please rise to your feet. Put your hands together for Mr. Christopher Life. Woo-hoo!
All right. Well, this is coming to the close of our opening general session. And I want to tell you just a little story about my past. I grew up as a kid, a boy in San Diego, in a Christian, right-leaning home. And are you familiar with the term American exceptionalism? The kind of right has this notion that America has been the best thing that the world has ever seen. And as a kid, I had American exceptionalism. I was certain that we were the best country that had ever existed, and that all that we did was good. All that we did was good domestically, and all that we did was good abroad. And yet, there were still all these problems in the world. And so I wanted to play a role in solving those other problems. And as I came of age, I looked out in the world and I saw extreme poverty. 2 billion people in the world living on less than $1 a day. That's the biggest problem. I'm going to dedicate my life to solving that. And I went to San Diego State University, graduated summa cum laude in International Security and Conflict Resolution. I went to San Diego State, graduated in International Security and Conflict Resolution. And I went immediately to Africa after I graduated. And I got involved with poverty alleviation work and what are the things that we can do as international allies and brothers and sisters to be able to support our brothers and sisters in other parts of the planet that were suffering. And I was in that work for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. And I tried to focus on solutions that would help people to identify their own problems, discover their own solutions, and implement those solutions with their own available resources. They could help to be able to improve the quality of life, but not be dependent upon external capital. I thought that was really the path forward. And a couple years into that process, I read a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. As I'm reading the pages, I'm realizing that the Western banks and Western governments are intentionally putting countries around the world in debt and enslaving them in economic imperialism, and that Kenya, the country that I was in, wasn't able to invest money in roads and hospitals and schools because they were obligated to make interest payments for predatory lending at international scale. What am I doing as an individual in Kenya trying to help people if my country is actually playing a direct role in creating poverty around the world? So for me, the American exceptionalism bubble was popped. And once it was popped, it kept popping worse and worse and grosser and gnarlier, right? And I learned about the military-industrial complex, right? That so much of our profit revolves around perpetuating violence and killing people. And I learned about big pharma, and I learned about our health system. And when you pull the curtain back and you look at what's on the other side, you see that this is a business system that systematically profits on people getting sick and staying sick, and then cashing out as many transactions as possible before they die. And that there's a whole relationship between the health industry and big pharma and ag, and all these pieces started connecting. And I said, oh my God, what are we as America? What have we become? Are we this beacon of liberty and prosperity and opportunity? Are we a global scale gang that assassinates the presidents of other countries to be able to make sure that we have them comply to our economic preferences? How do I make sense of this? How do you make sense of this? Right? Am I proud to be an American? Am I ashamed to be an American? As I asked myself those questions, I realized the answer was both. What's true, that I'm actually very proud to be an American. It's also true that I'm very ashamed for what our country's done. Right? But what does it mean that what our country's done? Right? That's a simplified term, but what are we actually talking about? What we're talking about is that the ideal of governance of, by, and for the people has been captured. That's what we're talking about, right? So the government's not the problem. It's that we have political systems that have become more effective at putting people into office that serve corporate interests than we have the ability to put individuals into office who are going to serve public interests. That's the base math equation right there. What would happen if we were able to put individual American citizen stewards back responsible for the public institutions of our republic that are not serving partisan interests, corporate interests, or ruling elite interests? What would happen? What would happen if our Congress is full of independent Americans and we protected that? What would happen if our states were run by independent Americans? What would happen if we created constructs around the governance of this republic, the United States of America, that fulfilled the ideal of governance of, by, and for the people by making our government hyper-transparent, firmly accountable, and deeply participatory? Because the founders of this country, they ran an experiment. Have you heard the term the Great Experiment? It's a political science experiment, right? And what was that experiment? Can you do governance of, by, and for the people without bad actors controlling it? That was the experiment. What have we learned? Well, we've learned that when we set the ideal of governance of, by, and for the people, we can create the most prosperous country in the world, right? What we've also learned is that if we don't safeguard that through a high degree of transparency, accountability, and engaged citizen participation, and we let our hands off the steering wheel, then bad actors are going to take that all the way through. And they're going to invert and pervert our public institutions to serve profit interests. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So, if that's true, what do we do about it? Right? What are the opportunities that are available to us? And I keep looking back to the founding of this country for inspiration and for guidance and for instruction, right? They say that you can only look as far forward as you can look as far back, right? So let's look back so that we get the clues we need so we can look forward, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So let's make sure we understand the rhyme that we're a part of. 250 years ago, the American colonists realized they didn't like being controlled by Britain. They just didn't like it. You can add a more sophisticated language to it, but ultimately, that's not what they wanted. So what did they do? They declared independence, right? If you're married to somebody and you don't like being married to them, what should you do? Declare your independence, right? If you grew up in a family tradition that was imposing dogma on you and it doesn't feel good for you, it doesn't feel right to you, what should you do? Declare independence. Is independence the have-all, end-all? No. It's a step in the process. It's a critical step in the process, and you should probably declare your independence from your previous spouse before maybe you open yourself up to find what's happening next for you in your life, right? So if we're in this choice point at a political level, and we're saying, oh, there's this two-party system that seems kind of like a uniparty, and it seems like it's giving me the false perception of choice, but it seems like it's all just ultimately servicing these same ultimate interests, and I feel manipulated, I don't like this hyperpolarization thing, and everything feels stupid all of a sudden, and what the hell is going on? And you don't like that? What should you do? Declare independence. Right? Your first moral obligation as an American is to declare independence from what you're not aligned with, right? Independence means we're not bolted onto the two-party system. Independence means that we're making sure that we put individual American citizen stewards in office. But at the base of all of that, what does independence mean? It means that I think, speak, and act for myself. It means that I'm responsible for the way that I make sense of reality. It means I'm responsible for what I speak. And I'm responsible for aligning my actions with my own integrity. So at the core of it, that's what it means to be an independent. And you are all in this room because you're independent. At some point along the way, you started thinking for yourself. You started making your own choices. You started questioning authority. You started coming to your own conclusions. And that's led you all the way through your life right into this room right now. So this room is full of independence. Welcome. It's very nice to meet you all. Declaring independence is step number 1, right? What do we do next? Okay, we're independent. Okay, cool. So that's like 100 million independents atomized at the level of individuals. And then you have these two gargantuan, like, major political parties that are really one, like, integrated political system. Then we're just, like, throwing little pebbles against a charging rhino, right? Not going to get the job done. But if all those pebbles start to come together, then what do? We're building mass. We're building gravity. We're building power. At the root of our country's name is a spiritual and philosophical underpinning of possibility. United States. Can we have states that are sovereign and making their own decisions and having their own taxation policies and their own everything else? And can they also be united to be able to achieve a common purpose of collective defense and improved economic efficiencies, right? United States. Okay, so people say, oh, United Independence, that doesn't make sense. It makes so much sense. It's a reflection of the name of our country. United Independence. Let's, as individuals, be sovereign. Let's think for ourselves. Let's help to be able to make sure that we are not being overly influenced and not falling into groupthink. Check. And let's come together, right? How do people who are sovereign, independent individuals work together without falling into groupthink? They consciously identify their common ground. What do we have in common? What do we have in common? And how do we work together to achieve those common goals? And I heard vision a second ago. That's what the vision is. The vision is us achieving together something that none of us could achieve on our own. So what's our common ground, right? We've got independents here that come from the far right, and they're like libertarian to the max. And we have independents that are in this room that are from the far left, and they're like, we really need socialism. And like, how does a far left and a far right independent come together as a part of a united independent movement? Is it possible? Am I just naive, like it's never going to happen, like we're just going to keep being like, oh no, we'll never be able to get along, so it's not even worth trying? No. The colonies spoke different languages, had different religions, had different economic models. They did it 250 years ago, so why can't we do it now? They identified their common ground, which was what? Independence from Britain. They spoke different languages, different all the things, but they knew what their common ground was. And they sent their sons and daughters into battle because of it. So what's our common ground? We all know that we've got a problem with this corporate duopoly. We all know that. Left and right, we know that. We all know that we need to decrease corruption in this country. I think we can agree that we can decrease that corruption by increased transparency and accountability. So what unites us is our common interest in improving the quality of governance in this country. And we have the opportunity to build a national platform that revolves not around the traditional social and economic issues that the media uses to perpetually pit us against each other. It revolves around transcending that whole left-right narrative that we've been programmed to think we know our talking points against our enemies about the certain things that we all know what those things are. We transcend that whole thing like a phoenix, and we say what we're focused on is what the founders of this country were focused on, which is how do we actually do governance of, by, and for the people? How do we improve the quality of our governance? How do we make sure it's fair? How do we protect the procedures? How do we make sure it's transparent? How do we make sure we have the right technology? How do we make sure we have the right cultural standards? How do we make sure that we're governing well? How do we make sure that the quality of the discourse in this country is respectable, mature, responsible, solution-oriented, and ultimately fruitful? So all of these topics, whether we're talking about culture or policy or technology or disentrenchment of the two-party system that is feigning as though it is synonymous with American politics, but it's not. We are able to come together as a united independent movement, declare our independence from the status quo as it's been, and say, I am no longer being obedient. And yes, I use that word obedient because it's time to tell you, give me your attention. Okay, I'll give you my attention. Perpetuate these talking points with your neighbor. Okay, I'll perpetuate these talking points. Okay, vote for the lesser of two evils, which is our person. Okay, I'll do that, right? So we're being obedient to the call of this two-party system, trying to tell us how to keep doing what it's doing. Okay, so a little history lesson that we've had dictators across the world, and many of them have been replaced by uprisings from their people. And there's a pretty typical pattern, which is a dictator gets into office one way or another through violence or through election system, and then they stay there, and they start to use the public institution for personal benefit. And as the people start to get more and more debased in this process, they get more and more angry, and the tyrant has to become more and more violent to keep them at bay. That increased violence pisses them off more, and ultimately there's a successful uprising, right? That's a standard equation. Okay, do we have a tyrant in this country? Do we? Is there any one person? No. We, as Americans, have invented the world's most sophisticated tyrant that's ever existed in human history, and that's the duopoly system. It's a system that enables the whole thing to seem like it keeps going, and it allows that tyrannical control to persist through generations. It's freaking genius. If a tyrant uses violence to be able to maintain control, what does a systemic duopoly use to maintain control when its control is threatened? Hyperpolarization. It keeps pushing us more. Have you noticed that we're going more and more in those narratives? We're eviler and eviler to the other side, right? We're more evil to the other side, whatever that means, than we were 10 or 20 years ago. Why? Because that system's trying to hold on for its last thing. It doesn't want the plug to get pulled, but it's really actually on life support. It's trying to pretend like it's still in charge. So, now is our opportunity to be able to declare independence from that existing system and choose for ourselves the path forward. And we are organizing a united, independent movement as a context for all of us to be able to work together. Right? We heard from Forward Party before. Very important piece of the equation. There's also the Libertarian Party. There's also the Green Party. There's also many other parties that are represented in this room right now. They're holding down ballot access. They're holding down some of the systematic pieces necessary. But above and beyond those parties working as they are, we need a national movement of millions of independents who are stepping forward and saying, I am a part of the United Independent Movement. I am giving my time. I am giving my resources. I am giving my alignment and my credibility to be able to participate in what's being created. We have more and more elected officials who are beginning to declare their independence while in office. Right? Kyrsten Sinema and Senator Manchin just recently declared independence from the two-party system. I'm an independent now. So we have existing elected officials who are declaring their independence, and we have more amazing people entering into the space. And what's our responsibility to do as movement leaders, and I'm saying as movement leaders because that's who you are, right? I told you at the beginning of today, we're not just running a conference so we can all just talk. We're assembling We're working together. We put out that bat signal, and you're the ones that showed up. You're in this room for a reason. And so we as leaders have the ability to lay down a national infrastructure to be able to support millions of Americans in being able to plug in, right? So the great people that have thought, I've always wanted to run for office, but I never want to run for a Republican or Democrat, and an independent can't win, as they see the independent movement building, they're now saying, I'm going to run for office now, and I'm going to do it as an independent. Or the incumbent who's been completely grossed out by their partisan affiliation, but never believed there was any path towards re-election without that, now they're seeing, oh wait, the independents are showing up. I can get re-elected as independent. I'm going to follow Senator Sinema and Manchin, and I'm going to declare independence too, and I'm going to run for re-election as independent. Can you start to see the chain reaction that's possible? So what we need to do is lay down the national infrastructure so that we can have organizers, so we can have financial resources, so we can have the right technology in place, so we have the right media partners, so we have the right celebrities, so we have the right merch, so we have all the different pieces so that people can say, wow, I was just kind of doing my own thing as an independent over here, and now there's this thing I can plug into and be a part of. And that this thing is aligned with my values, it's aligned with my vision for the future of this country, and there's a clear invitation for how I can plug in. So we are laying down some of those pieces of that infrastructure. One of the pieces is establishing common ground, right? So if you haven't seen already, in the pop-up banner at the United Independence Lounge, there's a QR code that says, help create a United Independent platform. And that's a survey with about 44 questions. I want to ask every one of you to engage with that while you're here, because that's actually allowing us to start to get the data on where our alignment is. And then I want to ask you to take that survey and share it with 100 other people. Our goal is to have 20,000 people participate in this survey between now and the end of the year, so we can start to be able to reveal what the core principles of a united independent movement can be. And a little bit of a kind of spoiler alert is most of us agree that we need to end the duopoly control in our country. Most of us agree that we need to improve the quality of our governance. And most of us agree that we have deeply corrupted industries that need to be deeply revamped, right? So we can start to use those things to build ourselves. So will you participate in this survey with me, please, while you're here? Really, really appreciate it. And please notice what it's like for you as you're going through it. You feel that sense of resonance. And imagine if there was 1 million or 10 million of other people that were united in feeling that way with you. Okay, what else do we need? We need organizers. We need people who are able to play a direct role in this movement ongoing. And what do I mean with organizers? Okay, if I'm going to run for office as a Democrat, then I'm going to get that nomination, and then, oh, look, there's 37 Democrat organizers who are going to conveniently support my campaign. That's materially relevant. I'm going to run for an independent. As an independent, well, there's like my wife and my kid and the dog and the like red flyer wagon, and like that's like what we've got, right? So what if in every city around the country we had organizers that were trained, that were educated, informed, that knew how to use the different technologies for campaign, that knew how to talk to people and knock on doors, that knew how to do those types of activities, so those organizers could swarm around the emerging independent candidates. And then those chapters could come together to help people to get state reps elected and national reps elected and governors elected as independents, right? So can you see that we need a national network of organizers to support this movement? Does that make sense? So if you feel inspired to be a part of that, whether you want to be it by way of your personal involvement of time and energy or by way of your finances, there's another QR code at the United Independence Lounge that says become a member. So if you feel like I'm here, I found my home, this is where I want to be, I want to plug in, then please plug in and register as a member and choose a monthly reoccurring amount that you want to give so we can start to build the financial infrastructure to help to do this while also getting you more involved. Okay, so what else is involved to build this infrastructure? We need tools. We need campaign tech. Did you know that most campaign technologies are inherently Republican or Democrat, so that most independent candidates haven't been able to even access the campaign tech they needed to be able to get the job done because that's been blocked out. So we need new campaign technology solutions that not only empower independent candidates, but these organizers can use and be trained with and understand so they can use them in multiple elections ongoing, so we can actually build a movement that knows how to get the job done, right? So that's one of the other tools. We have Electify, one of our partners here, that's doing exactly this. We need to be able to help independents have their media services needs. They need to be able to run ads. They need to be able to build websites. They need to be able to get their PR handle. They need to be able to do social media, right? So we need enterprises that are serving independents, because Republicans and Democrats have no problem finding media agencies that specialize in servicing their needs as an independent, as a Republican or Democratic candidate. And then from a service providing standpoint, independents are oftentimes left in the dark. And they don't know where to go, they don't know what they need. Most political operatives aren't servicing independent candidates, and they have a problem financing them and making those payments. So we need to be able to put these base pieces in place. We need to produce events, right? We need event production. We need to be able to actually keep bringing us all together. So these are some of the tools that we're putting in place. And we also need the financial infrastructure. So we're rolling out a super PAC called United Independents WIN. And this is a national PAC that any of you can contribute to. You can contribute $5 or $500 or $5 million. And we'll be able to organize those resources and coordinate them and deploy them in the most strategic ways possible. How are we going to deploy those resources? Are we going to put a little bit of money behind every independent? Absolutely not. And this leads me to my next point. We need a context of joint action. We need to move beyond, like, okay, great, I got all the talking points, I'm inspired, I got it, but what do we actually do together? And I'm offering that what we do together is we build a national campaign between now and November of 2026 to put a block of independents into Congress in this upcoming midterm. What would happen if we did that? Well, there'd be a group of independents that were able to caucus together. So we'd fundamentally transform the entire political landscape of our country, and we'd show to everyone in the country and the world that independents are beginning to win at a federal level. We shift the limiting belief that independents can't win, and we unlock a tidal wave of financial support, a tidal wave of new talent entering into the space, and a tidal wave of individuals and organizers and voters that are ready to get behind them, right? So we concentrate, like a magnifying glass concentrates the light of the sun to be able to light a little leaf on fire. And we focus on a specific number of districts that have a high probability outcome of a win, that represent a coalition of other organizations that are working together. And we, as Ali said earlier, we help to train them to run on the platform of improving governance, because that's the platform that's going to allow them to be able to get support from the left wing and the right wing of their districts. And we're going to be able to empower them with the right campaign tech, with the right organizers, with the right media, and with the right financial endorsements from the super PAC that can run the ads and the commercials and the independent door knocking and all the things that happen on the left and the right. We have to start playing that game as an independent movement. So you're all invited to the party. That's not a party. You're all invited to play a direct role in helping us to be able to move this process forward. We have the ability to sit back in November of 2026 and say, we did it. We put a block of independents in Congress. And we had to leverage that win. We had to sit back in November of 2028 and say, wow, we put a bigger block of independents in Congress, and there's some solid independent governors, and there's independents across the rest of the government, and we brought an independent president right through the front door. And I guarantee you, if we don't do it in 2028, we're definitely going to do it in 2032. So we are coming, like Dell said, like everyone says, you can't stop this. You don't take a trend that goes from 25% of Americans as independents to 30 to 35 to 40 to 50 to 51, and then all of a sudden it's going to change directions. This is a breakout trend, people. So we're going to be 50%, 55%, 60%, 65%, 70%. How long are we going to believe that independents can't win? Right? So that's where we're going, and you all can play a direct role in enabling all of that to happen. So I want to invite you to get involved, okay? I wish I had time to talk to every one of you at this event. I don't, but find me, get my contact information, talk to our team members. I know that each of you have a piece of the equation. I know it. And it could be the financial resources, it could be expertise, it could be connections, right? It can be whatever your piece is, but how many of you know that you have a piece to bring to this conversation, right? Look, what if we could all actually bring those pieces together? And we're not running an event to run an event. We're running an event to birth a movement. And we have a team that's vocationally deployed to be able to make sure that we can help to serve as a backbone to enable this incredible decentralized independent movement. And that comes back to the finances. So any of you in this room who are capital holders, high net worth individuals, run successful companies, and you realize, wow, I've worked really hard in my life to be able to accumulate resources, and I've done that successfully, and now I'm looking for more purpose. I'm looking for how do I use those financials that may have been generated through, in some degree, industries that you're actually realizing maybe contributed to the problem, but now you still got this pile of cash. You're trying to figure out how to be able to write that equation. I can tell you one of the most powerful things that you could do is to invest in the United Independent Movement. To be able to help to bring that capital and help to bring it into the super PAC, help to bring that into our membership network, help to be able to bring those financial resources forward so we can move out of the grassroots. We can move out of the startup mode as a movement and actually build a responsible organization with the right staff and the right financial infrastructure to be able to take this thing and see it all the way through. I'll tell you what, you can see who I am, right? You can see what I stand for. You can see what I'm passionate about. You can see what I care about, and you can probably feel my heart, right? I can do this part. I can't do the funding part. So I need your partnership so we can do this whole thing together. And so if you have that capacity, have a conversation with me. We actually have critical funding needs for this very event that we're in right now. So some of these things are actually quite imminent and urgent. And we want to raise a couple $1 million to be able to birth the next stage of this entire system, and then raise more, and then raise more, and then raise more. To be able to fund the PAC, to fund the candidates, as well as fund the infrastructure of the organization. Raise of hands if you're interested in helping to support this movement, getting the funding and the capital needs met so we can keep moving forward sustainably. Thank you. Why am I doing this? What really motivates me? I'll give that to you in two levels, and then we're going to close. Number one, because I really love our country. I really believe that the United States of America is ultimately, net, long term, a blessing to this world. And, you know, there's like the kid, and they're like cute, and they like smell good, and then they become like a teenager, and they get kind of weird and temperamental, and they start smelling bad, and then they like get the keys to the car, and they get in a car accident, and they do all this kind of stupid stuff between like 16 and 21, right? They're going through an adolescent phase. They're trying to figure out how to use the power that the oncoming adultness is giving them. What if we're not deeply broken as a country? What if we're actually just in an adolescent stage? What if we're going through a developmental process? And the same thing that transformed that 21-year-old when they become 25 and 30 and 35 and start becoming more responsible is actually just about to spontaneously emerge for us. What if we're about to mature as a country? What if we're about to awaken to the ability to live into our potential and to fulfill the original promise of our nation, which was governance of, by, and for the people in service to the promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all? What if we haven't failed? What if we're still on our way? Right? I'm doing this because I believe that we're just about to make it. And the way we're going to do that is by looking at the last 250 years of this great experiment as political scientists and say, where did we go wrong? How do we plug in the holes? And how do we make sure that our republic going forward is transparent, accountable, and participatory? And if we use the last 200 years of failing to do that to give us the inspiration, the information, and the motivation to be able to put that in place, then I'll say it was all worth it. And not just worth it at the scale of our country. Because this prayer of can we all work together to create collective benefit with that not ultimately be used against us by bad actors is not just a prayer for this country. That's a prayer that lives in the heart of all of humanity. That's a journey that we've been on from tribes to fiefdoms and kingdoms to nation states. Like, can we all get together in a way that's good and beautiful? Because when we can work together at the scale of millions, nothing is impossible. So we need the ability to collaborate at scale and maintain the integrity of those systems. And like the caterpillar just consumes and consumes and consumes and consumes, seems like it's destroying everything, but it's actually preparing to go into a chrysalis and then all of a sudden rebirth into a pollinating, beautiful butterfly. What if that's right, what we're about to do? So I'm looking at the next 1,000 years, right? I'm looking at the future of our country. I'm looking at the future of our world. I'm running the math on what is the fulcrum point between dystopia and utopia at a planetary scale. And my assessment is, can we move the public institutions of this country in the hands of the people? And can we make our government hyper-transparent, accountable, and participatory and model that for the world? I believe if we can do that, that can catalyze a transformational process at a planetary scale that could ultimately inform the future of everything. Okay. So that's why I'm doing it. And I believe that the United States of America is destined to play a leadership role in moving us through the intense systemic problems that are occurring in every direction in this world and helping to be able to navigate through a rebirth portal to be able to redesign human civilization in a way that's more beautiful, that focuses on quality of life and human dignity and the ability for us to all coexist without undermining each other's ability to have liberty. And that brings me to my last point. Because, okay, I talked about government, I talked about societal efficiencies, I talked about, the future of our country, but why does that even matter? It matters because of the precious gift of being alive, right? We're all alive right now. And there was a time when we didn't used to be alive, and there's a time when we're not going to be alive. But we're alive right now. Right? Our eyelids are still blinking. Our lungs are still breathing. Our heart is still beating. We have the ability to love and make love. We have the ability to create. We have the ability to express ourselves. We have the ability to enjoy our time with each other and on this beautiful, natural world that we call Earth. And it's because of the preciousness of life that I am motivated to go all in. to achieve this result. Because when I look at children that are blown up by missiles that are being deployed so we can be able to renew the contracts to the military contractors to order more missiles, and we're looking at the complete and utter decimation and destruction of the preciousness of life. For what? That prevents me from being in action. That disables my ability to be complacent even if I wanted to. Because the truth isn't just that we are undermining civil liberties in a general sense. It's that kids are dying. It's that people's lives are being debased. It's that we're unsustainably and irresponsibly extracting the very infrastructure of life itself at a biological and geological level of our planet. So it is for the preciousness of life that we may enjoy the experience of being alive, and that our children and our children's children and our children's children's children can too enjoy the experience of being alive. It's from that place that I call upon your partnership. It's from that place that I call upon your camaraderie. It's from that place that I call upon your support and your involvement and your engagement. And I believe that if we organize right now, effectively, more powerfully, every month that goes by, every year that goes by, to create a united, independent movement in this country that starts to elect more independent American citizens into office, that starts to effectively transform our government to become more transparent, more accountable, and more participatory, then we will have been those ancestors that responsibly protected the future. So now you know a little bit about me, Christopher Life, our organization and our intent with our organization United Independence, and you are invited to plug in, to be ambassadors, to be funders, to be the next generation of candidates, to be partners in a myriad of different ways. Over the next today and tomorrow, every one of our panel conversations is designed to process and metabolize this conversation further. So what does it mean to be United Independent Movement? That's happening next. It's going to be a shorter panel because of what's happening right now. Then we're going into why do we need to be independent to be able to achieve this revolution? And when I say revolution, I mean as a practical sense, not as a buzzword, but when we move power in a new direction, we're having a revolutionary effect. How can we create an effective 2026 campaign to put a block of independents into Congress? How do we fund this movement? And how do we create independent narratives at a mainstream national scale so when independents turn on the television, they actually see themselves reflected back at themselves? Because right now, it's like a trick mirror. Independents are there, and they look into the media, and there's no reflection. So we need to solve that problem by telling the story at that national scale. So everything I just mentioned is literally what the conversations of this afternoon are going to be processing. In other stages, we're talking about health. We're talking about agriculture. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about technology. We're talking about all the different components of building blocks. And so I want you to look at the schedule. I want you to pick the conversations that not only most interest you, but the things that point in the direction of the solutions that you want to be a part of. If you want to solve the technology, go to GovTech. If you want to be a financial partner, go to the Funding the Movement. If you've got something to say on media and narrative, go to the independent media messaging. If you're in the ag conversations or the health conversations, go to those spaces, find your people, process the subcomponents of this movement with your peers that are experts so we can all bring them together, so we can assemble together a movement that can create true systemic transformation in our country. Do you guys get what we're trying to do here? Then come back here tonight around 9 for a concert so we can dance together, we can party together, we can move our bodies together, we can celebrate our inevitable success that's inevitable because we're choosing it to be. Then tomorrow, we've got a whole slate of panels, so the same logic applies. Look at the schedule. We're passing out print schedules. Get clear on what messages resonate with you. Show up to those panels, play full out, listen, take notes, have conversations with other people in the audience because they probably care about the topic too, and your next business partner or collaborator may very well be right there with you. And then we're going to close this event tomorrow night with Congressional Congressman Dennis Kucinich, with Senate candidate Dan Osborne, with one of the founders of the INC, Brock Pierce, with Forward Party founder Andrew Yang. And then if you'll have me back, I'll come out and bring a little bit more fire to close this all off. And then we have an incredible concert tomorrow night as well. So please plan on having an amazing next 36 hours with us. And we're going to send you off Thursday night, late night, exhausted and tired and spent and inspired and ready to go back home and play a meaningful role in helping to determine what happens next. Because I believe that we are, and you are, the founders of the next era of America. And it's now our opportunity to show up, to be in that leadership, and to bring that opportunity into full fruition because of our choice. Thank you. Welcome again, the Independent National Convention. Together we rise. Let's do this thing. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. All right, guys, a couple of quick announcements for you. There is lunch out in the atrium. Please go grab some lunch if you're a VIPer or a talent. There is some talent lunch for you in Evergreen A. Follow the signs. We also have kind of a public service announcement. If you parked in the driveway and not behind the gate of the parking area, that is not an actual parking spot, and we need you to move your cars. The hotel will start towing. So please, if you're going to go, if you did park there, just jump in your car. You want to pull through the parking gate and park in the parking lot. It is $18 for the day. However, there are other lots nearby as well. Please let us know if you've got any questions or need directions. You'll see our staff running around. They're happy to help you. We're going to kick our next session off a little bit sooner because we are behind schedule, but we will catch you guys back up. But please go grab some lunch and we'll see you soon.